They told the lawyer I was dead. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Legally. Fully. Deceased. The words, next of kin, not applicable, were printed in black ink on a file I wasn't supposed to see, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You deserve to know how I got here, how a breathing, thinking, working mother like me ended up erased from my own life, sitting outside a mahogany-paneled law office, watching my sister-in-law try not to choke on her latte when I walked through. The door to my name is Meredith Allen. I'm a former trauma nurse, single mom, and, apparently, ghosted. IT started 6 months earlier, on a Tuesday. I was restocking gauze in the supply room when I got the text, need to talk. Come home early if you can. Josh being my husband. Or rather, the man I thought was my husband. I did come home early. He didn't. Instead, I walked into a living room with no sound. No cartoons blaring, no clink of dishes, no smell of coffee. The house had that stillness that tells you something's wrong. On the kitchen counter was a note, not even addressed to me. Just, took the kids. We need space. Don't call. My heart sank before my knees did. I sat on the floor and stared at it until the sun went down. By midnight, I'd called every hospital, every mutual friend. Nothing. By morning, I found a credit card charge at a resort 3 states away. His name. My kids. No emergency. Just escape, and just like that, the betrayal was surgical. Precise. Silent. Josh wasn't the yelling type. He was the eraser. The type who rewrites the past and then pretends it's always been that way. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I called a lawyer. Her name was Dana Ward. Sharp voice, sharper suits. She looked at the note. Listened to my story. Then said something that chilled me more than anything I'd heard. You need to assume he's preparing for a custody fight. And he's not playing fair. Turns out, she was right. 3 days later, I received a letter, not from Josh, but from his attorney. Custody petition. Full custody. Allegations of mental instability. The ink hadn't even dried on my tears before they were filing to take away the only thing that mattered. That's when I realized this wasn't abandonment. It was erasure. He wanted to make me vanish. As if I'd never mothered, never soothed nightmares, never stitched together our fractured life. That I replayed everything, our last Christmas, when he smiled across the table but never met my eyes. The way he flinched when I talked about refinancing the house. The late-night walks he claimed helped clear his head. They weren't random. They were rehearsals. The kids, Emma, age 9, and Tyler, 6, were suddenly enrolled in a new school. Their medical records were transferred. He even blocked me from accessing the online parent portal. It was a coordinated lockout. When I drove to the school, the secretary said, "Oh, we were told you moved abroad." Abroad. I lived 12 minutes away, and then came the final blow, the part that made my lawyer's hands shake. We subpoenaed his communications, hoping to show parental alienation. What we found was worse, an email sent from Josh to his lawyer, dated the day before his custody filing. It read, "She's out of the picture. No next of kin. Proceed as planned." Attached to it? A falsified death certificate. My name. My birthday. Cause of death, undisclosed medical condition. Dana stared at me across her desk, her mouth a perfect line. "He's building a legal wall around your children. And he started with your grave." I should have broken. Instead, I smiled. Because if I was already dead in his story, that meant I could rise without warning. I wasn't going to fight him emotionally. I was going to fight him surgically. The first time I ever held a scalpel, my hand trembled. That was 15 years ago, in a trauma rotation, standing over a man with glass embedded in his chest. But I didn't hesitate. I cut. I saved him. This was no different. I was done playing the grieving wife. Josh wanted to turn me into a ghost. Fine. Let him underestimate what a ghost could do when she learned the system better than him. That we started with the basics. Dana filed an emergency motion in family court, asserting that not only was I alive, but that Josh had knowingly submitted fraudulent documents. He hadn't expected that. His face, when served, must have been the picture of panic. I imagined him in his hotel robe, sipping coffee, while a process server handed him the envelope with my living name printed across the top, but this wasn't about a court date. Not yet. First, we needed proof, not just that I was alive, but that he knew it. That meant digital forensics. Dana brought in a tech specialist, a woman named Iris, who could trace metadata, IP addresses, and account histories faster than I could unwrap a sterile tray. I gave her everything: my laptop, my iCloud access, even my old Facebook login. She dug through years of emails and found it, a Gmail draft never sent, saved under his personal account. Subject: if Meredith ever talks. It was a contingency plan. A list of steps to discredit me, mental health notes, edited screenshots, even photos of an old prescription bottle I'd stopped taking years ago. He'd been building the narrative long before he left. That draft was time-stamped 2 months before he walked out. He was planning this while I was still folding his laundry. Flashback. One night, I'd caught him staring at the TV, but the screen was black. He wasn't watching. He was calculating. He turned to me and said, "You ever think some people just disappear too easily?" I laughed. He didn't. Now I understand why. Iris also recovered deleted texts between Josh and his sister, Amanda, the same sister who used to babysit my kids. In one, Amanda wrote, "You sure she won't show up? Last thing we need is her pulling some miracle return." He replied, "She's in a fog. She won't fight. She never does." I printed that one out. Framed it in my mind like a war medal. Because they thought I was broken. But broken doesn't mean done. Dana filed for a temporary restraining order, not for violence, but for obstruction of parental rights. She argued that by faking my death, Josh had interfered with legal custody protocols, a violation that could carry criminal consequences. We also submitted a motion to freeze joint accounts, pending investigation. Every cent he moved after filing the death certificate was under scrutiny. He tried to transfer money into a trust, one that conveniently listed Amanda as the guardian of the children's assets. Dana blocked it within hours. The court ordered an emergency hearing. I walked in wearing black, not for mourning, but strategy. Let them feel the irony. Josh was there, of course, sitting with his lawyer, jaw tight, suit too crisp. He barely looked at me. But when he did, it wasn't shock. It was irritation. Like I was a clerical error he had to clean up. His attorney stood and tried to explain it away, a misunderstanding, a documentation mix-up, even implying that I had exaggerated. Dana, stone-faced, handed the judge a packet. Evidence. Dates. Emails. Metadata logs. The judge didn't say much. He just looked at Josh and said, "If this is true, you've committed perjury, fraud, and attempted parental kidnapping." Silence. Josh blinked. Swallowed. Then said, "She was unstable. I didn't know where she was." I thought. The judge cut him off. "You filed a death certificate, Mr. Allen. That requires a coroner. A body. You had neither." The room was so quiet I could hear my pulse. I won the emergency injunction. He was ordered to surrender the children's passports, halt all financial transactions, and return them to shared custody within 72 hours. But it wasn't over. This was just the pre-op briefing. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at a photo, Emma holding Tyler in her arms, both of them in Halloween costumes. She was Hermione. He was a frog. Their eyes smiled. Mine did not. They'd been told I was gone. That I'd abandoned them. And if I knew Josh, he hadn't just lied, he'd made me the villain. The war had started. I wasn't out to prove I was a good mom anymore. I was out to expose what kind of father he really was. I saw Emma before she saw me. She was stepping out of Josh's car, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair messily tied up the way I used to do it for her when she was half asleep. Tyler followed, holding Amanda's hand like she was his mother. We were outside the family therapist's office, court mandated, part of the emergency custody ruling. Josh didn't come in. He stayed in the car, sunglasses on, engine running. Coward, I walked up to the glass door and stood still. Emma looked through me for a second, like her brain refused to compute. Then she froze. Mom? Her voice cracked on the second letter. Tyler stared, confused. Daddy said you. He stopped himself. Amanda stepped forward like she was about to intercept me, but then she saw my eyes. Not rage. Not desperation. Surgical precision. She turned and walked back to the car without another word. I knelt down to Tyler's level. I'm here, baby. I never left. I love you. That never changed. He wrapped his arms around my neck, tight and silent. Emma didn't speak. Just held onto my sleeve the entire session. Later, I found out Josh had told them I had a condition. That I'd gone somewhere safe and couldn't return. A lie dressed up in soft words. But lies rot, no matter how carefully you wrap them. Flashback, Christmas 2 years ago. Josh made peppermint hot cocoa, extra whipped cream. He watched the kids unwrap gifts. Then I found the receipt for an Airbnb rental, dated the same week. Just in case I needed space, he said. That's when I first ignored my instincts. Never again. After the session, Dana and I met in her office. I want everything, I said. She nodded. Then we start digging. You ready for that? I was. I'd learned to suture wounds. Now, I'd learned to dissect a lie. We subpoenaed Josh's banking activity, not just the obvious accounts, but anything tied to his SSN, including offshore reports and old brokerage ties from his father's estate. Turns out, Josh had inherited $320,000 a year before he left. Not a dollar of it reported on our taxes. Not a cent shared. He'd opened a trust fund. Named Amanda as the stand-in guardian for Emma and Tyler. Filed paperwork stating that the children's biological mother was deceased legally. It was airtight, except for one detail. I was breathing. Dana grinned when she read the documents. We don't just have him on fraud now. We've got intent. This wasn't emotional abandonment. It was premeditated asset shielding. I thought about the birthday parties I'd planned alone, the double shifts I took while Josh searched for clarity. He wasn't lost. He was preparing a life without me. A life where he kept the kids, the money, and the narrative. We filed for full custody and financial restitution. The petition included evidence of trust mismanagement, child endangerment, and willful defamation. Meanwhile, I reached out to an old friend, Camille, a forensic psychologist I'd worked with during a domestic violence case at the hospital. She evaluated me twice. Just so there would be no questions, I'll write the affidavit myself, she said. He's weaponizing stigma. I'll end that. While that moved through the system, Dana had me sit for a deposition. We wanted everything on record, the timeline, the emails, the therapist logs, even the PTA member who confirmed Josh had lied about me being institutionalized. Then came the part one wasn't ready for. Dana said, you need to start recording everything. Every pickup. Every call. Every public comment. It's not just about proving he lied, it's about showing the court he hasn't stopped. So I did. I bought a second phone. Logged every encounter. Josh called once to ask if he could take the kids for ice cream just as a family. I said no. He responded, you're really gonna make this ugly, huh? I saved the recording. I didn't cry. Not even when Emma asked why Dad said I ran off. I just said, he's confused, baby. But I'm not. And I held her until she fell asleep on the couch. I was starting to learn the rhythm of revenge. It wasn't screaming. It was gathering, quiet, meticulous. Every move, a thread in a net he didn't know was tightening that he thought I'd fight like a wife. I was fighting like a surgeon. The next move wasn't mine. It was his. Josh filed a motion to dismiss the fraud claims. His attorney argued that the death certificate was an error, blamed on a digital clerical oversight from a third-party insurance form. He claimed I'd disappeared voluntarily and refused communication, and that he'd acted in the children's best interest. It was a performance. But I'd been in trauma rooms with actors before. People lie best when they think. Survival depends on it, so I let him talk. Let him build his house of cards higher. Because Dana was already lighting the match. We responded with a timeline, a spreadsheet cross-referencing every withdrawal from the hidden accounts with dates. He told the court I was unstable. We had screenshots of Amanda confirming my supposed death to a school counselor. We submitted Camille's psychological evaluation, which labeled me not only sane, but emotionally stable, highly functional, and an anchor figure for my children. We also handed over the trust documents, the ones where Josh had signed his name under penalty of perjury, stating I was deceased due to medical complications. Let's see him explain that. To a judge, Dana said, but it wasn't enough to win legally. I wanted to win socially. I wanted the people who nodded at his version of events to flinch the next time they saw me walk into the school parking lot. So I did something cold, calculated. I invited the PTA president, who happened to be the local realtor who once flirted with Josh at an open house, to coffee. I let her talk. Didn't interrupt. Then I said, just so you know, I'm not dead. And neither is the truth. Her lips parted. He said you left. That you'd had a breakdown. I did. I smiled. A breakdown of illusions. I gave her a red folder with the custody petition and fraud exhibits. You're a community leader, I said. Make sure the right story gets told. Flashback, our 10th anniversary. Josh took me to the mountains. He toasted to forever, but his phone buzzed twice with a contact labeled AG, Amanda Grace? Attorney General? I never asked. I wanted to believe. Now I wanted no more belief, just evidence. I filed a cease and desist against Amanda. She had no guardianship rights, no legal claim to speak for my children. Yet she had called their school, their pediatrician, even their dentist, pretending to be next of kin. Dana sent the letter herself. Amanda went quiet after that. We also filed a subpoena for Josh's communications with the law firm that helped him prepare the trust. They tried to block it, attorney-client privilege. But the judge ruled in our favor. The emails were illuminating. One in particular, the less she's involved, the cleaner this gets. Assume she's gone. It was dated 1 week after he moved out. Meanwhile, the kids had started asking real questions. Why did Daddy say you were sick? Why couldn't we call you? I never spoke against him in front of them. Instead, I said, some people say things they wish were true. But we don't need to wish. We have now. And I hugged them both so tight I thought I'd break at night. I lay awake, not grieving, calculating. Every lie he told left a trail. Every piece of paper had fingerprints. Dana began preparing for trial. We weren't going to settle. We weren't going to mediate. We were going to expose. 1 week before the hearing, I received a manila envelope at my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. I plugged it in. It contained a single video file. Josh. Drunk. Speaking to a friend on speakerphone. Slurring. She's not gonna fight. Meredith never fights. I made sure of that. If she comes back, we'll deal with it. But hell, maybe she won't. I don't know who sent it. Maybe the friend. Maybe guilt, but it was enough. I had already risen from the grave they dug for me. Now I was dragging his lies into the light, one unholy truth at a time. The courtroom felt too quiet that day, not the silence of respect, the silence of tension. Like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd break. I didn't. Josh walked in first. Polished. Shaved. Tie adjusted just enough to look like effort. His lawyer was new, the other one had dropped him 2 weeks prior. Something about misrepresentation of facts. Translation: even attorneys have lines they won't cross. I was in Navy. No jewelry. No makeup. Dana said, make them see your steadiness. I made them see my steel. The judge called the case, Meredith Allen versus Joshua Allen custody. Fraud. Attempted legal erasure. We started with a brief statement. Dana opened calmly, professionally, Your Honor, we will show not only an attempt to erase a mother from her children's lives, but a premeditated campaign to secure financial control, property rights, and emotional leverage through falsification of identity and legal fraud. Josh's lawyer tried the narrative of confusion again. My client was misled. He believed his wife had abandoned the family. He did what he thought was best for the children. The judge wasn't having it. I reviewed the trust documents, the emails, the death certificate. I don't think we're here today because of a misunderstanding. Dana presented the flash drive first. The video played through courtroom speakers. Josh's voice filled the room. She's not gonna fight. Meredith never fights. I made sure of that. The silence afterward wasn't just awkward. It was damning. Josh didn't look at me. He looked at his hands, folded like a child caught lying. Next came the therapist's affidavit, Camille's psychological report, and the school administrator's written statement that Amanda had impersonated me over the phone. Then Dana brought out the timeline. A giant printout on foam board. Every lie, every filing, every dollar moved, all laid out in black and red ink. By the end, the courtroom didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt stunned. Flashback, the night Josh asked me, you ever wonder what you'd leave behind if you vanished? I thought it was romantic. Now I know it was rehearsal. When it was my turn to testify, I didn't cry. I spoke plainly. I described how I came home to an empty house. How my access to my children's lives was severed piece by piece. How I learned, through legal documents, that I had been declared dead. I told the court, I'm not here today just to get my children back. I'm here to make sure no one else gets erased like I did, not without consequences. After I stepped down, Dana whispered, you just sealed it. Josh didn't testify. His lawyer advised against it. The judge recessed for deliberation. 45 minutes. I sat outside, palms flat on my knees, breathing in measured counts. I didn't pray. I prepared. When we returned, the judge read the ruling aloud. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of premeditated fraud, custodial interference, and reputational defamation. Full legal and physical custody is hereby granted to the plaintiff, Meredith Allen. I closed my eyes. Not in relief. In confirmation, the judge continued, all trusts, financial accounts, and property transfers executed under falsified declarations are declared void. A formal referral is being made to the district attorney's office for further investigation into potential criminal charges. Josh stood, opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked like he'd swallowed the wrong name. Mine. After the hearing, I didn't approach him. I walked right past. His eyes followed me, but his body didn't move. Amanda wasn't there. She'd disappeared, poetic in its irony. Outside, Emma and Tyler were waiting with Camille. Emma ran. Tyler followed. Is it over? She asked. I knelt down and pulled them close. It's just beginning, I said. Everything true, we get to write it now. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the one Josh had once bought to match his fantasy of a stable home. I lit a single candle. Not for memory. For clarity. I was alive. More alive than I'd ever been, and the reading, the one where I'd been declared gone, hadn't buried me. It had resurrected me. 3 weeks after the ruling, I got the official letter, final custody order, full legal and physical custody granted to Meredith Allen. I read it once. Then again. It didn't bring joy. Just breath. The children came home for good that same weekend. Their backpacks sat like relics on the living room floor. Emma ran to her old bedroom, untouched, still with the fairy lights we'd hung the winter before he left. Tyler curled into the couch, fingers absently tracing the stitching of a pillow I'd made from one of Josh's discarded dress shirts. Thought he didn't speak much. Emma did, Mom. I kept your necklace. The silver one. She opened her palm, revealing the tiny crescent moon charm I used to wear every shift at the hospital. I knew you weren't gone. I didn't cry. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Thank you for believing in ghosts." Flashback, my last shift at the hospital before all of this began. I'd saved a man in his 60s from cardiac arrest. He held my hand afterward and said, "You know how to bring people back." I hadn't understood the weight of that then, now I did, but the fight wasn't entirely over. Josh had filed an appeal. It wouldn't go far, not with the mountain of evidence we had, but Dana advised we stay sharp. The appeal isn't about winning, she said. It's about delay. He's buying time. For what, I don't know yet. And she was right. 2 days later, I got a call from the children's school. Someone had tried to update the emergency contact list. Amanda, I sent the court order to the principal personally. Then I filed a motion for a restraining order against Amanda, this time with teeth. Dana made sure it listed every impersonation, every lie she'd told on Josh's behalf. The judge granted it within 48 hours. Amanda was barred from coming within 100 yards of the children, their school, or our home. I changed the locks. Set up cameras. I was done being reactive. Now I was prepared. Meanwhile, something interesting happened. The community started shifting. That PTA president I'd confronted? She spoke at the next meeting. Publicly corrected Josh's story. Said, "I believed lies once. I won't again." Murmurs spread. Whispers turned. I didn't care about their approval. But I cared that my children wouldn't grow up thinking their mother had ever left them by choice. And then came the reading. I didn't know it was happening until Dana got the notice. Josh's father had passed away 2 years earlier, left behind a sizable estate. In the updated will, Josh was listed as executor, Amanda as backup. Me? Officially removed. Cause of removal, deceased. The reading was scheduled for Tuesday morning. At 9 a.m., I walked into that dark paneled office like it was my operating room. Controlled. Precise. Calm. The secretary's face went pale. Amanda was already seated, flipping through her phone. She looked up. Froze. Meredith? Alive, I said. And present. The lawyer conducting the reading was a thin man with trembling hands. He fumbled with the file. I wasn't informed. I handed him the corrected court orders. A notarized declaration of my legal status. And a letter from Dana stating my claim to any shared estate as the surviving mother of the deceased's grandchildren. Amanda stood. This is insane. She's making a scene. No, I said. I'm closing one. I didn't attend the rest of the reading. I didn't need to. I'd already made my point. 2 hours later, Dana called. The lawyer amended the record. Your legal status is restored in the estate file. Good, I said. Let them write that in ink this time. That night, I took the kids for ice cream. Emma chose mint chocolate chip. Tyler picked birthday cake swirl, even though it wasn't his birthday. We sat on a park bench, the kind I used to dream about in the early days of this storm. Not the big victories. Just the small moments. Proof of presence. Josh still hadn't called. Not even once. I expected he'd try something again. But now, I wasn't just a nurse. I was my own defense system. I'd learned how to close wounds. Now I knew how to prevent them. 2 weeks passed. Then came the envelope, certified. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just a typed sentence. If you don't stop, I'll take it all underground. I stared at it for 5 full minutes. Not out of Fear, out of calculation, this wasn't desperation. It was a leak. Josh was showing me the holes in his strategy, and I knew exactly what to do. I called Dana. She said, "We move now. If he's bluffing, we corner him. If he's not, we get ahead of it." She filed an injunction to freeze not only Josh's personal accounts, but any shell corporations or limited partnerships traced to his name. Iris, our tech forensic, reran the financial tracing. And just like that, something new surfaced: a holding company in Wyoming. Registered 6 months before he left. Listed under J. Allen Trusts LLC. Guess who the beneficiary was? Amanda. Again, guess who the minors were listed as contingent inheritors? Emma and Tyler. Again, but nowhere. Nowhere was my name. This isn't just fraud, Dana said. This is premeditated inheritance laundering. We brought the findings to the DA. Within 72 hours, Josh received a notice of pending criminal investigation. Wire fraud. Perjury. Conspiracy to falsify legal documents. Flashback, our 3rd year of marriage. I found a spreadsheet on his desktop. Family budget, projected without Meredith. He said it was a joke. Now I realized it was prophecy. I began prepping the children for questions. Emma was old enough to understand words like court, judge, and truth. Tyler just wanted to know if we were safe forever. We're always safe now, I said. I promise. That weekend, Josh called from an unknown number. I answered. He said nothing for 10 seconds. Then, "You could have just let this go." I replied, "You buried me and took my children. I don't let that go. I autopsy it." Clicked. I had the call recorded. Dana submitted it as part of our filing to oppose his appeal. It showed intent. It showed threat, and most of all, it showed something I hadn't heard in his voice since this all began: fear. His appeal was dismissed. The court ruled that his conduct disqualified him from joint decision-making responsibilities. He could file for supervised visitation in 6 months. Pending the outcome of the criminal case that he didn't do by then, his accounts were frozen. His assets seized pending review. Amanda's name was scrubbed from every legal filing involving the children. Her restraining order made permanent, and the community, they spoke. Whispers turned to declarations. At a school board meeting, the superintendent apologized publicly for allowing contact changes without verification. They instituted a new policy. Fingerprint checks. 2-parent sign-off minimums. The ripple effect of my resurrection was policy, but I didn't feel powerful. Not yet. One afternoon, I found Emma curled up in her room, holding that necklace again. "Why did Daddy lie so much?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer that gently, so I didn't, because some people need to believe they're the hero of their own story, even if they destroy everyone else in the process. She nodded. Then whispered, "But you came back." Yes. I came back. And I wasn't leaving again. That night, I opened an old photo album. One from the early years. Vacations. First birthdays. Thanksgiving dinners. I took a red pen and drew a single line through every page that told the wrong story. Then I wrote the truth in the margins, not to erase the past. To reframe it, the day Josh was formally indicted, I was planting herbs in the backyard: cilantro, mint, basil. Things that smelled like life, like the kind of normal I used to believe was permanent. The DA's office called just after noon. 3 charges filed: wire fraud, falsification of legal records, and custodial interference. Bail set, but travel restricted. I didn't smile. I just pressed another seed into the soil. Later that afternoon, a neighbor came by, one of the quiet ones who never took sides but always looked a little too long. She brought a pie. Said, "I didn't know how bad it was. I'm sorry for believing what I heard." I nodded. Then replied, "You don't owe me an apology. You owe it to my daughter." That landed. She left quiet, and maybe a little changed up. By this point, the kids were settling into routines. Emma had joined a school newspaper club. Tyler was obsessed. With model trains, they didn't talk about Josh anymore. Not out of fear, out of choice. One night, Tyler asked, "Mom, when someone breaks stuff, do they ever fix it?" I said, "Sometimes they try. But other times, the best thing you can do is make sure they never get close enough to break it again." He nodded like a boy who understood more than he should have. Flashback, Tyler's 3rd birthday. Josh forgot the cake. He showed up late, said, he won't remember this anyway. I did. I still do. Dana called the next morning, his lawyer reached out. They want to negotiate. No jail time if he pleads out, forfeits assets, and agrees to zero contact. I paused, and I told them we'd consider it. But only if he signs a full confession for the court record. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about documentation. I needed the truth in ink, so when the kids were old enough to ask the hard questions, they wouldn't have to rely on memory or suspicion. They could read it, the facts, not the fantasies. Josh's lawyer resisted for 2 days. Then agreed. The signed confession arrived in a sealed packet. Typed. Notarized. 4 pages. He admitted to falsifying a death certificate. Admitted to transferring funds into a hidden trust. Admitted to instructing Amanda to impersonate me. Admitted he had planned to create a clean narrative for court. Clean narrative. As if removing someone's existence could ever be neat. I didn't read it all at once. I placed it in a folder marked, for when they ask. Filed it next to their birth certificates. By the end of the week, Josh had taken the plea. 5 years. Probation. Financial restitution. No contact clause enforced for the duration. If he violated it, the prison sentence would activate, no loopholes. I expected to feel something final. Closure, maybe, but it didn't feel like a period. It felt like a semicolon. A place to pause. To breathe. That weekend, I took the kids to the lake. No phones. No court talk. No shadow of the past, just water. Sunday, Emma trying to skip rocks. Tyler chasing dragonflies, and me, sitting in a chair I built myself, watching a world I rebuilt, piece by piece, law by law, truth by quiet truth. There was no one left to lie. No one left to erase me, and when I looked in the mirror that night, brushing my hair back behind my ears, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a woman who had outlived the story someone else wrote for her. Fall came quickly that year. The kind of crisp mornings that made your breath visible and your memories sharper. I found myself waking before the alarm most days, not from anxiety anymore, from clarity. The fog that once dulled my edges was gone. I had edges now. Sharp. One morning, Emma came downstairs early. She stood in the kitchen doorway, just watching me pack her lunch. Then she said, "You don't flinch anymore." It caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged. "Before. When someone knocked on the door or when you got a call, you always jumped. You don't do that now." I didn't know how to respond. So I just nodded and slid her lunchbox across the counter. The truth is, she was right. There was a version of me that used to brace for every impact. Now, I welcomed them. I had armor. And weapons. Legal ones. Emotional ones. The day Josh's restitution payment cleared, I took that money and did one thing. I created a scholarship, the Emma and Tyler Allen Resilience Fund. For kids who lose a parent, whether to lies, to the system, or to silence. Because absence isn't always death. Sometimes, it's erasure. I didn't attach my name to it. Let it live in their names. Let it do something clean in a world that had been too stained for too long. Flashback, the day I got the call about the death certificate. I had just finished my shift. Pulled into the driveway and saw a shadow at the edge of the lawn, someone watching. I never proved it was him. But I knew that I remember locking the door that night and thinking, I'll never feel safe again. Now. Safety had become something different. It wasn't about walls or locks. It was about legal boundaries. Emotional clarity. Knowing that if he tried again, there was a system that finally saw me, and I saw myself. I started journaling again. Not about the betrayal. About the quiet. Tyler's new favorite color. Emma's obsession with constellations. The way I felt when I paid bills without checking for overdrafts. The way silence no longer felt like abandonment, but like presence. One evening, I saw Amanda at the grocery store. She froze. I walked right past her in the frozen aisle, stopped at the section labeled of frozen truths. Picked up a pint of vanilla bean. Didn't break stride. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Because what was there to say? The law had spoken for me. And the silence that followed it was louder than anything I could have said. Back home, I opened a file. Folder labeled before. Inside, old photos, receipts, texts I'd printed from years ago. Back when I still believed he loved me. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I scanned them. Digitized the entire folder, then labeled it case closed. Put it on an external hard drive. Filed it away, a not to forget. To remember clearly. So that memory didn't become myth. That weekend, I took Emma and Tyler to a small beach 2 hours away. We collected shells. Watched the tide roll in. Emma asked, "Did you ever want to disappear?" I thought for a moment. Then said, "Once." But then I realized, disappearing is what people do to avoid truth. I wanted to stand in it. She nodded. Then handed me a shell. White. Smooth. Whole. Then keep this, she said. So you remember you didn't vanish. You came back. I kept that shell on my nightstand, not because I believed in symbolism, but because I believed in reminders. Of what I'd rebuilt. Of what no one could take again. Why now? The criminal case against Josh had quieted. He had completed his first probation review without incident. No contact attempts. No messages, but silence from a man like that doesn't always mean peace. It means he's waiting for the right storm. Dana and I stayed vigilant. She ran monthly checks through the state bar system, just to confirm no legal filings were initiated. I kept up with my custody documents, updated my will, and even opened a trust, a real one, with myself as sole executor. Every time I filed something, I did it with precision. No cracks. No shadows. People ask me sometimes, coworkers. Old friends who finally came around, why I didn't just move on. Why I kept everything so legally fortified, and I tell them this, because someone tried to legally kill me. He tried to erase my name, my presence, my motherhood. I don't let wounds like that close without scars. And I don't let those scars stay vulnerable. A flashback, our 5th wedding anniversary. He bought me a charm bracelet with the wrong birthstone. I corrected him. He laughed, said, "Does it matter? It's the thought that counts." But it did matter. It always did. Every time someone got my name wrong, my birthday wrong, my place in this world wrong, it chipped away at me. Until I decided, no more chipping. Only carving. With my own hands, Tyler started asking about middle names. He wanted to know why his wasn't cool. I told him his middle name was after my grandfather, a man who raised me to be sharp but kind. He smiled, then said, "Does that mean I'll be sharp too?" "You already are," I said. "And one day, you'll know when to use it." Emma, on the other hand, started writing poetry. Mostly about stars and questions she didn't yet have answers for. One night, she read me something. My mom came back from a place she didn't go / because someone said she left / but she didn't / and I know. I asked her if I could keep that one. She nodded. I printed it on thick paper. Framed it next to the custody ruling. Not because I needed proof. Because I wanted her words next to the system's, the emotional truth beside the legal one. That later that week, Camille, the psychologist who'd stood by me, reached out. She said a mother was going through something similar. Her ex had fled with their child across state lines, spun a web of lies, tried to sever her rights. Would you be willing to talk to her? Camille asked. Just tell her what you did. How you survived. I said yes, the woman's name was Lauren. She was young, smart, raw in all the places I used to be bleeding. I didn't give her advice. I gave her a list of the statutes that saved me, of the lawyers I trusted, of the signs to document, and of the voice I almost lost, and how I found it again. She cried. I didn't. Because tears were no longer my currency. Clarity was. That night, I took out a new notebook. Wrote at the top of the first page, abandoned, aware, in control. And under that, the next story won't be mine, but I'll help someone else write theirs. Lauren's story stayed with me. After we spoke, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking of how close I had come to disappearing. Not just from court documents, but from memory. From my children's future. From myself. The next morning, I called Dana. I want to do more, I said. Not just react when it happens. I want to build something that stops it from happening. Dana listened. She always did. By the end of the call, we'd agreed to form a nonprofit. A small one, at first. But precise, like everything else I'd done since Resurrection, Legal Light Project. For women falsely erased, silenced, legally outmaneuvered by partners who believed paperwork was more powerful than presence. That we filed the paperwork. Secured a tax ID. I used the last of the restitution funds to build the website. Simple, sharp, clear, and I shared my story anonymously at first. But then one day, I added my name, Meredith Allen. Nurse. Mother. Not a ghost. That post went viral. The messages poured in. I thought I was the only one. I've been fighting alone for 3 years. My ex told the school I was institutionalized. I wasn't. The details changed. But the pattern didn't. Men who used systems instead of fists. Paper instead of bruises, and women who were smart, capable, but overwhelmed by red tape and silence. I answered every message. Sometimes at midnight. Sometimes while stirring pasta. Always with intent. One day, Tyler asked, "Are you working again?" I said, "Not like before. I'm just helping people find their voices." He grinned. Like a voice doctor? Something like that. The nonprofit grew faster than I expected. We secured a grant. Camille volunteered to create a trauma-informed intake process. Iris offered her tech skills to help clients document abuse, trace manipulations, recover deleted records. I called them my quiet army. Flashback, the first time Josh told me I was too sensitive. It was over nothing. A joke that stung. I laughed it off, then cried in the shower. I remember thinking, maybe I am. I wasn't. Sensitivity isn't weakness. It's radar. And now I used it like sonar, detecting the patterns others missed. Emma watched me from the hallway one evening. I was typing responses to women I'd never met, whose pain I somehow knew better than my own reflection. She said, "You look different when you work on this." How? "You look like you're telling the truth out loud." That stopped me, because that's all this had ever been. A campaign to make sure the truth didn't rot in silence. One case came in from a woman in Oregon. Her ex had filed for sole custody and claimed she vanished. But she had proof. She'd sent weekly emails, vlogged, timestamped, ignored. We coached her attorney. Filed a digital affidavit to support her timeline. The judge reversed the custody order. She sent me a picture of her holding her daughter outside a courthouse. The caption read, "Back from the dead. Just like you." I didn't reply right away. I sat with it, because it hit me. This was the beginning of something bigger, not just survival. Not just revenge. Legacy. I wasn't just rebuilding my life anymore. I was building a network of women who would never again be erased with a form. A signature, a lie told under oath. One evening, I took Emma and Tyler to dinner, just the 3 of us, their favorite booth at the diner near the river. I asked them, "Do you remember who you are?" Emma said, "I'm the girl whose mom came back." Tyler said, "I'm the boy who watches everything." And me, I was the woman no one could unwrite ever again. We never held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. No balloons. No podiums. The Legal Light Project opened its first physical office in a converted 2-room clinic downtown. The irony wasn't lost on me, a nurse who once saved bodies now saving identities. The plaque on the door read, "Every paper trail has 2 sides." The space was modest. A desk, a filing cabinet, a couch for women who needed to sit before they spoke. Camille stocked the side table with tea and tissues. Iris set up secure servers and 2-factor logins. Dana trained our volunteer attorneys on the laws most often exploited: custody misrepresentation, power of attorney abuse, fraudulent death declarations. We called them paper wounds because they didn't bleed, but they cut just as deep. Our first client to walk through the door was a teacher from out of state. Her ex had hacked her email and changed every court notification address. She missed hearings, lost custody by default. We helped her file a motion to reopen the case, gathered digital evidence, and assisted her attorney in presenting a chain of tampered communications. 3 months later, she regained joint custody. She sent a photo, her daughter in a yellow raincoat, smiling like the world had finally admitted she existed. That photo hung in our office window. Flashback, the day I walked into court, with Josh staring like I was a glitch. I used to relive that moment with shame. Now, I used it as fuel, because I never wanted another woman to enter a courtroom and feel like she was proving she had a pulse. One morning, I received a certified letter. The sender, Joshua Allen. I opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten apology. 8 paragraphs. No demands. No accusations. Just ink and weight. He admitted he was afraid. Said he couldn't bear to lose control, so he wrote a new story where I didn't exist. Said he didn't expect me to forgive him. Said he'd stay away. I didn't reply. Because some things don't deserve response. They deserve record. I filed it under final acknowledgement. A month later, I ran into Amanda at the courthouse. Of all places, she looked smaller. Not in size, in spirit. She didn't speak at first. Then finally, "I really thought you'd stay gone." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I know. That's why I didn't." She nodded. Not with guilt. Not even with regret. With recognition. She finally saw me. The me I was before they rewrote the script. When I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. Tyler got an award at school that week. Resilience in leadership. He stood in front of his class, holding a paper certificate, hair a mess, smile missing 2 front teeth. His teacher later told me, he said he gets his strength from watching his mom be brave. I didn't cry. But I stood outside his classroom for a while, letting that sentence hold me together. That night, Emma came into my room. Held out her journal. "Want to read something?" she asked. Inside, "I don't worry about monsters anymore. Because the ones that lied are gone. And the ones who tell the truth sleep down the hall." I closed the book. Held her tight. Didn't let go for a long, long time. The Legal Light Project was never meant to grow fast, but it did. Within 6 months, we had offices in 3 counties. Camille trained new trauma counselors. Dana began mentoring law students through the Truth Advocacy Fellowship. Iris built an encrypted portal where women could upload evidence from hotel rooms, shelters, or borrowed laptops, no one watching, no trace left behind. And me, I became the face, not because I wanted attention. Because I owed it to the women who whispered, I thought I was crazy. I started giving talks. Quiet ones, in church basements and community centers. Then louder ones, university panels, bar associations, legal reform hearings. Every time I spoke, I told the story plainly. I was legally declared dead by someone who didn't want me inconvenient. And I came back. Not for revenge, for record. Some audiences applauded. Some squirmed. Good. Discomfort was a sign that truth had landed where denial used to live. One panel, in particular, changed everything. A symposium on legal abuse and custodial manipulation. I gave my standard speech. Afterward, a woman in her 60s approached me with watery eyes. I'm a retired judge, she said. I've seen this. But we didn't have a name for it. We do now. She asked if I'd consider submitting a policy recommendation. I did. The Meredith Clause. Proposed legislation requiring independent verification for death declarations in custody cases. It didn't pass immediately. But it started conversations. Conversations turned into edits. Edits turned into votes. That was legacy. Flashback. The night I found the forged certificate. I was shaking. Thought I'd faint. Now, I could read the words deceased and feel only precision. They weren't power anymore. They were proof of how far I'd come. Emma watched one of my speeches online. She turned to me and said, "It's weird seeing you on screen. You look like a different person." I am, I said. But I remember her. Tyler made a drawing for school, a tree with half its leaves missing, but roots wrapped around a clock. His teacher asked, "What's this mean?" He said, "It's our family. We lost stuff. But time made our roots stronger." I framed that one, too. Not long after, a journalist reached out. Wanted to write a feature on women erased through legal manipulation. I hesitated. Then said yes. The article ran with the headline, "Dead on Paper, Alive in Power." It went viral. Bigger than I expected. Bigger than I was ready for. Emails poured in from lawmakers, educators, even 2 judges, but the one that mattered most? A simple message from a woman in another country. "I read your story. I'm walking into court tomorrow with mine. Not afraid anymore." That's when I knew I'd done what I came back to do, not just regain custody. Not just expose Josh. Not just reclaim my name, but burn a path through the lies so bright, others could follow it out of their own dark. Emma came into my room that night. Said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "You didn't come back. You never left. They just tried to write a story without the main character. And now everyone's reading the real one." I tucked her in. Turned out the light, and thought. Let them keep reading. I never saw Josh again, not in court. Not at school. Not hiding behind a steering wheel across the street, like he once did in the early days of his unraveling. He'd vanished in the way cowards do, legally restricted, socially disgraced, spiritually hollow, but the damage he'd tried to do had ripple effects. Some I didn't expect, like the day I found out he'd applied for a job using a resume that listed me, still, as deceased. He didn't even change the lie. He just copied and pasted it forward. I forwarded it to Dana. She said, "He's stuck in the story he wrote. Let him rot in it." I did, but not everything was about him anymore. The story was shifting. And it was taking me with it. We opened a new legal light location in a rural district, where court clerks still used paper files and ink stamps. Where a single false document could sit unchallenged for months. We held our first outreach workshop. There. A mother in her 40s, named Renee, came in carrying a plastic grocery bag full of papers, torn, folded, coffee-stained. Inside were divorce filings, expired restraining orders, old phone bills with highlighted call logs. She said, "I know I sound paranoid, but I swear he's doing this on purpose." She didn't sound paranoid. She sounded familiar. We sorted every document. Digitized them. Tracked inconsistencies. Matched court file dates to email timestamps. 3 weeks later, Dana helped her file a motion that threw out the entire custody verdict, citing procedural manipulation and lack of proper notice. Renee called me that night. Said, "You know what scares them most? Women who know how to read their own paperwork." She wasn't wrong. Emma started asking deeper questions about the past. Did you ever love him? Did you know he was bad before he did the worst thing? I answered every one. Without bitterness. Without revision. Yes, I did love him. That's how he got close enough to try to bury me. No, I didn't know. Because people like that don't show their teeth until you're too deep in the story to climb out fast. She processed that, then asked, "Would you still be who you are if none of it had happened?" That one took time. I finally said, no. But I think I'd still be good. I just wouldn't be sharp. She seemed satisfied with that. I wasn't sure I was. Flashback, the first time Josh apologized for something I didn't know he did. He said, I'm sorry if I've seemed distant lately. I said, you haven't. He said, exactly. And smiled. Even his guilt came wrapped in riddles. Now I saw guilt differently. Not as something I owed him, but as something he carried, and would carry alone. One night, I hosted a dinner for the legal light staff. I looked around the table, Camille in her cardigan, Iris tapping away on her laptop even with a fork in hand, Dana pretending not to smile when the kids brought her paper crowns. We weren't just survivors. We were engineers of clarity. I stood up and gave a short toast to every woman who's been rewritten. To every mother turned into a myth. To the ones who come back. And to those who never left in the first place, just waited for someone to hear them. The room fell quiet. Then came the kind of applause that doesn't fill a room with sound, it fills it with understanding. Tyler pulled at my sleeve. Afterward. Does this mean we won? I knelt down. No, baby. It means we started something no one can stop. The day my legal name hit the state register, corrected, reinstated, and sealed, I stood in line at the DMV, not glamorous. Not cinematic. But necessary. The clerk typed my name, paused, and said, there's a flag on your record. Says, deceased in error. Want to clear that? I smiled. Yes. Let's clear it. She clicked. Okay. You're officially alive now. We laughed. But I felt it, a line closing. A chapter not just finished, but archived. On the way home, I stopped at a local bookstore. Bought 3 journals. One for me. One for Emma. One for Tyler. Inside mine, I wrote the first line, I reclaimed my name, but I never lost my voice. Back. At the office, Legal Light had grown into a machine. We had interns, a case management system, even a partnership with a state university's law school, but I kept one thing personal, intake interviews. Every woman who walked through that door got me first. Because the first voice that heard me was Dana's. And now, I wanted to be that voice for someone else. One case broke my heart. A woman in her 20s. Her parents had filed conservatorship papers behind her back. Claimed she was unstable. Took her savings. Her apartment lease. Even her dog, all because she refused to marry the man they chose. It was legal. It was signed by a notary. And it was a lie. We fought it hard. After 6 weeks, we won. She moved out. Found work. Took her dog back. She sent me a postcard with a single sentence, thanks for reminding me that I exist. Sometimes, that was the whole war. Being allowed to take up space. To write your name on paper and not feel like it might vanish tomorrow. Flashback. When Josh forged my death certificate, he'd misspelled my middle name. One letter off. It was the kind of mistake people make when they're so focused on erasing you, they forget they never really knew you. Now, I made sure everyone knew my name. Meredith Ann Allen, born. Survived. Returned. Emma joined a debate team. Her first topic, paper can lie. She won. And Tyler wrote a short story in school about a knight who disappeared, and everyone said he was dead, but he came back with maps and told the kingdom they'd been looking in the wrong direction. His teacher gave him a gold star. I gave him a hug that lasted an extra minute. That night, I pulled out the original court filing Josh had submitted, the one that tried to erase me. I didn't cry. I didn't burn it. I laminated it, put it in a locked drawer labeled, proof. They tried, and failed. Iris told me we'd reached our 100th client. Dana told me we'd been cited in a state Supreme Court footnote. Camille told me the trauma screening tool she designed was being adopted in 3 counties, and I told them all, this isn't about revenge anymore. This is about record. The kids and I took a weekend trip. No courtrooms. No paperwork. Just a lake, a cabin, and a sky full of stars. Emma sat beside me, sketching constellations. She said, I think we're all just trying to leave a trace behind, so no one forgets we were here. I wrapped my arm around her shoulder. They'll never forget you, I whispered. Because you wrote your name in light. Spring returned quietly to no dramatic winds or late snow flurries, just a slow bloom, the kind you don't notice. Until you realize the trees are green again. Emma turned 11. She asked for books, not toys. Said, I want to learn about women who didn't disappear. I gave her a stack. Biographies, memoirs, stories with teeth. And I added one thing of my own, a typed document, bound, with her name handwritten on the first page. It was my full story. No edits. No softened edges. I want you to read this when you're ready, I said. Because one day someone might try to erase part of your life, too. And I want you to remember how I kept mine. She didn't say anything right away. Just hugged me longer than usual. Tyler asked if he could help Iris at the office. Iris gave him a USB drive and said, only if you promise not to break national security. He said, deal. The office now had a wall of framed phrases. Things our clients had said after reclaiming their lives. I thought I was lost. Turns out I was just buried. My name was never the problem. Their fear of it was. This time, the signature was mine. That wall became my favorite place in the world, but one day, the past reached out, not Josh, not Amanda, someone else. A reporter from a national outlet. He'd heard about the woman who came back from the grave and wanted to do a full investigative feature. I said no. Twice, but then I thought about Lauren. Renee, the teacher. The 20-year-old with the stolen dog, and I thought about how silence can sometimes turn into complicity. So I called him back. We met in the office late one Saturday. I told him everything. He asked smart questions. Didn't sensationalize. Didn't try to make me weep on record. When the article came out, the headline was simple, the woman they tried to erase. And the subheading read, How Meredith Allen Turned Legal Betrayal into a Map for the Silenced. The response was overwhelming. Donations flooded in. 2 former judges reached out to volunteer pro bono. A senator's office requested a briefing on how the law failed, but what hit hardest was a letter, written in looping cursive, from a woman in her 80s. I spent my life believing I didn't count because someone told the courts I was unstable. I read your story, and for the first time, I think maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe the system just never saw me. Thank you for existing, twice. I kept that one in my wallet, because some lives don't get second chances. And some only get lived once the first version dies. That spring, I gave a keynote speech at a women's legal conference. It was held in the same courthouse where Josh filed the death certificate. I stood behind the same wood-paneled bench. Looked out into a crowd of women who all had stories, some buried, some just beginning. I opened with one sentence, I was declared dead. But the lie didn't stick. Afterward, a law student approached me, teary-eyed. I'm going to clerk for a family court judge, she said. And I swear, I'll never let what happened to you happen under my watch. I nodded. Good, I said. Because the ink they used to erase me? It doesn't dry as fast as they thought. Summer arrived like it had something to prove. The kids were out of school. The office was thriving. And for the first time in years, I found myself breathing without checking for threats in the air. We took a trip, just the 3 of us. A rental cabin in the mountains. No Wi-Fi. No court documents. Just trees, fireflies, and the sound of my children laughing. One night, we built a fire. Tyler roasted marshmallows. Emma looked up at the stars and whispered, this feels like it was always supposed to be ours. It was. But we had to fight for it. Back home, the work continued. A woman came in, her name was Nadia. She didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. She just held a manila envelope in her lap like it might bite her if she let go. Inside were forged power of attorney forms. Signed during what her husband claimed was a medical episode. She hadn't even been unconscious. Just medicated. Disoriented. Vulnerable, and he'd used it to drain her accounts and sell their shared home. All legally. We got to work. Iris traced the metadata on the forms. Found 2 different IP addresses. He'd submitted one version, then backdated another. Camille walked Nadia through the trauma. Dana filed a fraud injunction. And I sat with her. On the day her bank froze his access, she cried when the teller confirmed her name, and only her name, was now on the account. I thought I'd never feel real again, she said. I told her, real doesn't mean loud. Sometimes it just means you've stopped asking for permission to exist. Flashback, the first time I noticed how quiet Josh got when I spoke about long-term plans. He'd smile, but his foot would twitch. He didn't like futures he couldn't controls. Now, my future had no room for quiet manipulation. Only clear terms. That summer, we crossed a milestone, 250 cases. 250 women who came back from legal silence. 250 versions of resurrection. I hosted a gathering. Not a gala, just a circle in the park. Picnic blankets. Iced tea. Laughter like it belonged. One woman brought a folder of her old court papers. She burned them in a fire pit, quietly, with her daughter holding her hand. Another brought the shoes she wore the day she lost custody, scuffed and cheap. She donated them to a museum exhibit we were building, artifacts of erasure. Emma helped organize it. Tyler designed a logo. It was shaped like a fingerprint made of shredded documents, because everyone leaves a mark, he said. Even if someone tries to hide it. That logo would end up in national news months later. But for now, it was ours. Josh remained silent. No violations. No messages. No sightings, but one night, a private number called. I let it go to voicemail. It was Amanda. Her voice cracked. I read the article. I know I was wrong. I know what I helped do. You don't have to forgive me. I just wanted to say. I remember you now. And I'm sorry. I didn't respond, not because I couldn't, because closure doesn't always come with conversation. Sometimes, it comes with stillness. That weekend, I sat on the porch with Emma and Tyler. They were playing a game they made up, something about hiding treasure and drawing maps. Emma turned to me and asked, if you could bury one thing forever, what would it be? I said, the version of me who thought silence would protect us. She thought about that. Then said, we'll keep her safe. But we don't need her anymore. No. We didn't. The museum exhibit opened in October. A single room, tucked in the back of the county library. No admission fee. No spotlight, just stories. Documents. Voices that had once been drowned in paper and ink. The entrance plaque read, they tried to erase us. Beneath it, in smaller print, we rewrote the ending. Visitors walked past, framed forged signatures, fake diagnoses, altered custody filings, all redacted where needed, anonymized, but real. At the center stood a glass case, inside it, a printed death certificate. My name. My birth date. A fake cause of death. And next to it, the court's reversal order, stamped and sealed. Tyler had designed the display title, Paper Cuts. A woman stood in front of it one day, unmoving. When I approached, she turned slowly and whispered, that could have been me. I nodded. It was me. Until I stood back up. Word spread. More women came forward. We added a wall where visitors could write their own stories on index cards and pin them anonymously. Within 2 weeks, the wall was full. Not all of them had endings yet. But all of them had begun speaking. That was something a flashback of Josh once told me, you're too dramatic. Always trying to make things matter. He was right. I do try to make things matter, especially when someone tries to convince me I don't. That winter, Dana called with unexpected news. Josh filed for permission to relocate. He's trying to move out of state, permanently. My stomach didn't twist. It settled that we reviewed the motion. He claimed he needed a fresh start. That the local community had mischaracterized events. We filed a response. Not to stop him. To attach a record to his file that would follow him, state to state, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. A documented trail. A judge reviewed our filing. Approved the move with conditions. Petitioner waives all future rights to parental access, decision-making, and visitation. This relocation severs legal contact with minors involved. It was done, I told the kids 2 days later. Gently, Tyler asked, will we ever see him again? I said, not unless you want to. And even then, he'd have to answer to a court first. Emma asked nothing. She just exhaled like she'd been holding it in for years. That we sat in silence. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was clean. Later that night, I looked at the shell she gave me all those months ago. Still on my nightstand. Still smooth. Still whole. I added something next to it, a key. To the legal light office. The first one ever cut. I wanted to remember the exact moment I stopped being erased and started unlocking doors for others. That week, we held a candlelight gathering. No speeches. No ceremony, just women, some with children, some with silence, standing together under string lights, holding names on pieces of paper, not names of their abusers. Names of the selves they refused to lose. Mine read, Meredith. Alan. Mother. Writer. Still here at AS. We stood in that quiet. Emma reached for my hand. Did you ever think you wouldn't make it? She asked. Yes, I said. But I did anyway. She nodded. Then whispered, me too. December brought a rare kind of stillness. Not just outside, snow-covered streets, quiet sidewalks, but inside. In our house. In me, it was the first holiday where nothing felt like it might be taken. No fake letters. No custody battles waiting in the shadows. Just a tree, some mismatched ornaments, and the warmth of certainty. Emma and Tyler made a new tradition that year. Instead of wish lists, they wrote truth lists. Things they'd learned. Things they wanted to remember. Things no one could steal. Emma said, Mom is stronger than silence. Paper lies. When people do, coming back is a superpower. Tyler said, I want to be a lawyer and a train conductor. Being invisible isn't the same as being gone. You can write your way back into the world that we framed them. That month, we crossed 500 clients served. Legal Light became a feature in a national report on systemic abuse through documentation fraud. Camille was interviewed for a podcast. Dana gave a lecture at Columbia. Iris was flown out to D.C. to testify in a tech policy hearing, and me? I stayed with the intake team. Because I never wanted to be so high up I couldn't hear the first sentence a woman whispered when she stepped into our door. I'm not sure I exist anymore. I knew that sentence like my own name. Flashback, the night I wrote my will, back when I thought I might not win. I didn't leave money or property. I left letters. One to each child. And one to whoever found me first. It said, please tell them I didn't leave. I was taken. Now those letters were sealed away in a drawer I no longer opened, because I was alive. And not just legally, fully. Loudly. Irreversibly. A former client named Jada sent me a necklace. Small. Silver. A single engraved word, returned. I wore it under my sweater like a talisman, not to show anyone. Just to remind myself, I did come back. Josh never reached out again. His move was approved, his presence erased from our legal records. The children no longer asked about him. They no longer needed to point. One night, I asked Camille, do you think people like him ever change? She paused, then said, I think they have chances. But they use them to shift blame, not shape truth. I nodded. That was enough for me. At our winter fundraiser, I gave a short speech. Just 5 sentences. I was told I was dead. By someone who didn't want to face me. But I came back. And when I did, I left the door open behind me. So no one else had to claw their way out alone. The room went still. Then applause. Then silence again, the good kind. At home, I tucked Emma and Tyler into bed. Kissed them goodnight, then I stood at the window, holding the original forged death certificate in one hand. And the full custody ruling in the other. I lit a match, burned the first, framed the second. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had the record. I never planned to be remembered. Not like this. Not as a symbol. Just as a woman who refused to stay. Erased, but somewhere between the lies they wrote and the truths I recovered, I became something else. A reference point. A case study. A story passed around women's shelters, courtrooms, and college seminars, the woman who died on paper and lived anyway. To by the one-year anniversary of the verdict, I stood on stage at the state capitol, beside Dana, Iris, and Camille, as the governor signed the Meredith Clause into law. Every family court in the state would now require independent verification before declaring any parent deceased, unfit, or unavailable in legal filings. Mandatory third-party review. Verified notices. No exceptions. So it wouldn't save everyone, but it would slow down the erasers. Afterward, a young intern approached me. She couldn't have been older than 19. She said, "My mom was erased, too. Not legally, emotionally. Your story helped me believe her again." I hugged her. Held her long enough for it to mean something. Back home, the kids baked a cake. Chocolate with too much frosting. Emma wrote in icing, "Still here. Still ours." We ate it at the kitchen table, the one I'd once cried on, broken, abandoned, erased. Now it was a monument to survival. To return, I kept one last ritual for myself that night. After everyone slept, I sat on the floor of my closet. Opened a fireproof lockbox. Inside, the laminated court ruling. My new will. Emma's poem. Tyler's drawing. And a photo of me, taken 2 weeks after the verdict, not smiling, just still. I added one final note. Handwritten. Slipped it into the box. Sealed the LIDIT. Read, "They said I was gone. I wasn't. I was learning the system. And when I came back, I brought justice with me." I tell this story not to relive it, but to remember it clearly. Because clarity is what saved me. I was not the first woman to be erased. I won't be the last. But I was one of the few who had the tools, the rage, and the support to claw my way back into the light, not just for myself, but for every woman watching her name fade from a page she didn't sign. I used to think survival was enough. Now I know, survival is just the foundation. What we build after the record, the network, the change, that's the real legacy. I am not Meredith, the victim. I am Meredith, the architect. Of my name. Of my children's clarity. Of the truth that outlived the lie. I learned the law. The way I once learned triage, fast, cold, and with my hands shaking. But the shaking stopped. And the silence that once surrounded me? I turned it into a courtroom echo that followed him into every legal document he'll ever file again. My children don't remember a mother who cried on the floor. They remember the woman who walked into a lawyer's office and said, "Tell me what he's done. I'm ready." Let them remember that. Let them carry that, and let every man who thinks a form can erase a mother, a woman, a name remember this. I didn't haunt you. I outlived you. In court. In truth. In ink.